Welcome to the SAMA Podcast, where we talk to the most experienced people in B2B to find answers to one simple question. How can you become and remain essential to your strategic customers? Tune in as our guests reveal what it takes to become the supplier they cannot afford to lose. Learn how to level up your account management strategies to promptly deliver speed, convenience, and success to each customer. Let's jump into the discussion right now.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the SAMA Podcast. I'm Gordon Galzerano, President and CEO of SAMA, and I am thrilled to bring you a conversation that sits right at the intersection of strategic account leadership and next-generation sales enablement. Today, we're going to dive into the evolution of sales training. So a deep dive into how sales training and coaching are really shaping the future of sales. And we're going to do that with none other than Brian Dietmeyer, who is CEO of CloseStrong. So a little bit about Brian. He's a pioneer in the sales effectiveness space, having spent over 2 decades helping organizations like Microsoft, Google, FedEx, and Honeywell literally transform how they negotiate and close complex deals. He's had senior leadership roles at organizations like Marriott and has actually served on SAMA's board as VP of Marketing. He's also a respected author of several business-to-business sales books and holds an MBA from Kellogg at Northwestern. So in this episode, we're going to take time with Brian and really try to draw out his unique perspective on how AI and technology in particular are shaping sales training, the critical skills leaders must coach for impact, and how to measure what really works. And so whether you're a sales leader, a coach, or a strategic account manager, key account manager, there's something in this episode for you. So let's get going. Brian, I want to, first of all, welcome you to the SAMA Podcast. Good to see you.
Thanks. And thanks for the lovely intro. You missed, I have been a dump truck driver and a construction laborer, and you missed that. I'm most proud of those skills, which are no longer current, by the way, but yes.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about people skills a little bit later in the broadcast, but thanks for calling those out. I'm pretty sure that those help cultivate who you've become in your adult life too, but that's pretty funny. Thank you. Hey, Brian, let's kick off. Let's start with the big picture. How have you, because you've been at this for a while, so how have you seen the sales training landscape evolving, I should say, over the last few years, especially with the proliferation of technology, AI, and what's coming next?
I was thinking, Gordon, as you well know, but some of the listeners or viewers may not know, you and I did a podcast on my podcast about disrupt or be disrupted. And that was your topic. And I feel like it's exactly the same thing in the sales training landscape today. It's being blown up. And I guess sometimes it helps me to kind of define the problem first, that American companies are spending about $26 billion a year on sales training, which is primarily kind of skill acquisition, right? These 2-day events, lightly customized. And then there's so much frustration with application to deals and then pull through, and are we landing it, that kind of thing. And it's funny, I interviewed 65 execs and kind of talked to them about, hey, we've got a sales issue. We pull the sales training lever, we announce it at SKO, we roll it out, and then we have huge frustrations, which, with what happens on the back end. In fact, Gordon, in these 65 interviews, it kind of blew me away. And I did a post on LinkedIn a couple weeks ago about this. Almost every one of these execs had invested money into sales skills. They were all frustrated with, we're not qualifying opportunities, right? I'm being called in to help get these deals closed, and we never should have gone after them. We're not multi-threading. We're not doing discovery. We're not prescribing solutions. We're order taking. And so that's kind of the problem. And so to talk about how it's evolving, it's everything. So when people think about sales training, I think they think about the methodology, the IP, right? And to redefine this thing, to disrupt it, we have to think of the entire system. From what is the IP? How is it customized? How is it delivered? How is it applied to deals, right? How is it then pulled through on the back end and coached? And that technology is really allowing us to rethink that entire system of sales training. And so I kind of wanted to start there as we talk more about it, is thinking of that entire system.
So having said that, let's kind of dig into that piece for a second. Then how is this shift reshaping how training is actually getting delivered and applied to real deals?
Yeah. So when I think about sales training, I think sales training is how to sell. And 100 years ago, I was a Miller Heiman client associate, or I think whatever they called them at Marriott, and I delivered training classes there. And that's kind of, today how most of it rolls out is let's run these 2-day events and that sort of thing. So technology allows us to do this. I think to move from kind of event based to always on. We think about moving from just in case to just in time, right? And also it allows us to work inside deals, to start immediately with let's work on a live opportunity, right? And let's use the AI, let's use the data from your company to kind of train by doing. It's how adults learn, right? So there's no need to recall the training if you've got 365, 24/7, always on support. That to me is the redefinition of training and how technology allows us to do that, to have that constant sort of support and reinforcement 24/7, 365, every rep, every deal, every sales stage. So I think one of the biggest ways that technology is changing, believe it or not, is what we used to call customization. And I was speaking with someone else in the methodology business the other day, and we were saying, methodology companies primarily customize at the company level, right? I'm coming into Honeywell to do this training, so let me tweak it a little bit to put some Honeywell language in there. I think this is where the technology really, really helps in the sales training area, is that we can build out multiple scopes of data. What is the AM or the sales rep selling? Who are they competing against? What vertical are they in? And many of the customers we're working with, we define that as a scope. This deal, this competitor, this vertical. There might be 20 or 30 scopes, right, within a company. And AI and technology allows us to just really drill down. So when a rep comes in to get guided or trained, they're clicking on them, selling this against this person in this vertical, and then the data is being delivered to them really, really zeroed in. And the piece I would add is also in line with company strategy, right? So one of the customers we're working with right now, we interviewed the gentleman who runs their deal desk. We recorded that interview, summarized the interview. What do you want more of, less of, same of, as these deals are coming into the deal desk? And then put that prompt directly into the guide, right? So the deal desk manager was like, holy smokes, you just scaled me, right? You just saved me 200 conversations over the next year. Just having the reps guided in context with the deal desk strategy isn't going to fix it, but it'll probably get the deals in 60 to 70% better shape before they land at the deal desk. So when I talk about customization, it's at that level, which is really unbelievably ridiculous now, the ability to do this.
You said a couple of things which I thought was really intriguing when you were talking about scopes, plural, based on how you need to sell, based on the organization strategy and remit. And I think you said something earlier that really resonates certainly with me and others. And that is, are our sales teams investing the time in discovery to truly have an empathy for their customer, their company, their customers' outcomes and priorities? And I think the short answer is no. But the way you are describing this now is through an automated, more scalable, repeatable fashion. That work is happening with and for them to now drive productivity into where we want them investing their time. And that is truly engaging with the customer around that outcome with relevance to achieve that outcome. Let me ask you.
Yeah. I'm sorry, just to add on that, you're exactly right. And technology now allows us, when it looks at where the rep or the account manager is within this opportunity, it will say, okay, let's identify some risks and red flags. So you have data that you need to get. You can either public search that data, or here is the discovery question to use with Gordon by name, right? The technology's got the ability, and it embeds the KPIs of the person you're talking to into that question. Yep. So when I said we have to really rethink everything, like that's another great example where real time it's saying, okay, here's the exact question, and I think that makes it just a ton easier for reps to move from, hey, what's keeping you awake at night, to this is what should be keeping you awake at night. How do you feel about these KPIs, et cetera?
We know what's keeping you awake at night. And I think that's kind of the shifting sands, as we were talking about disrupt or be disrupted. One of the biggest disruptors that are happening today are the shifting expectations and requirements of customers and how they want more personalized experiences. And what you're describing is meeting them where they want to be. And that's something unique and differentiated for them, about them, and the business they're trying to solve for. So if we think about, let's talk about leaders for a minute. We think about the new most critical skills that leaders need to be developed on, and how we actually coach our sales teams. What based on all this change and shift that's occurring, what are your points of view there?
I think I have a pretty strong one. And I didn't have this until we started building out this solution. There's a difference between coaching skills and coaching deals. And the one thing that we know for sure is that there's evidence that win rates and deal sizes improve when you have the one-on-one coaching. And I did this in my former company. We coached billions of dollars of deals, and we learned that. But that was difficult to scale in my previous company, which still exists. We do a lot of human coaching, and it's very expensive, right? And it's very difficult to scale. So coaches need to know, first of all, I should be working on deals. Right. And not only that, I shouldn't be auditing what the rep or the account manager is bringing to me. I should be problem solving. Okay, we've got a risk here. Or we're missing data. How can we work together to go find that? What can I do internally to help you get this deal approved? That sort of thing. So that is real deal coaching versus skill coaching. And the problem is, this, most people listening know this, frontline managers don't have the time to do that. And now technology allows us to get some of that done in advance and then turn it over to the frontline manager and say, okay, it's kind of pre-coached. We've been guiding this thing through 3 or 4 sales stages, and now this is where you're at, and you can jump in your coaching. They've got to learn how to take something that's been pre-coached and then dive even more deep and provide real consultative support to the person that they're coaching.
So let's double click on this one for a minute, because I want to come back to broader ROI and the tangible kind of outcomes that move the needle. But first, I want to kind of double click into the coaching piece. How should their approach as leaders to coaching evolve, especially in this era of AI, data, and increasingly complex buying behavior?
Yeah, I think the core, you had asked about sort of new critical sales skills and how do we coach against them. I think one of the core skills, let's just take this one piece, is customer decision making. So we know that it's more complex. We know that no decision's on the rise, right? Customers are really struggling with committee-based buying, and a lot of deals end up getting stalled. So in the past, most salespeople were taught, understand the customer's decision process. That process is broken today. It's not that helpful to understand a broken process where deals are stalling. And I think of the number one skill for a rep and a coach to be coaching is the customer decision. We need a ton of data on the customer decision, so much so that we can lead them. Hey, when you're making a decision to source this category, not really to buy my stuff, but to source, whatever it is, firewall protection software. Here's the people that should be involved in your decision. Here are the criteria. Here's some tools for you to use to be able to manage this very complex decision. We as sellers have watched thousands of people buy our stuff and make mistakes, either not buying it or buying it, inappropriately. And there's a lot of knowledge in organizations, much more so than the customer that might only make this buy once a year. So I believe, Gordon, that's the number one skill for reps, is to be able to guide and lead the customer's decision process versus understanding it. And then the manager to be able to provide support there. We have to become sort of consultants for sourcing in this category. I believe that's a huge emerging piece.
I agree. I think you're absolutely right about that. And I think that's what customers want. They want us to be more consultative with and for them, bringing insights that they otherwise didn't know about, but most importantly, make the most out of the investments that they're making with us and to be able to drive a tangible return on that investment. Speaking of return on investment, I wanted to come back to training more broadly, because as I speak to leaders that are in the sales enablement space, they're always looking for tangible training return on investment. But what are the things that you think, Brian, based on where the puck is going and the direction we're going in this space, what do you think actually moves the needle?
I wonder when Wayne Gretzky said that, I skate to where the puck is going, if he had any clue, right, how that quote would live in infamy. So I think it's.
He also said
that
you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take, right?
Right.
And then I saw a meme on that which basically said you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take, and in golf, statistically speaking, 99% of the shots that you do take. So anyway, sorry.
That's why people are frustrated with golf. I think so. When we think about what moves the needle, we have to rethink that entire system of if you're going to use training, quote unquote, to move the needle, we have to think again the way it's customized. Is it directly tied to the strategy? And think of sales training not as skills acquisition, but as execution of your strategy, which is changing every quarter. What do you want people doing? Who do you want them calling on? What's a qualified opportunity look like? And if we rethink that and get that in front of reps, those are leading indicators, right? So when we think about ROI, lagging indicators, right, are win rate and deal size and all that sort of stuff. So we've got to look upstream and say, what is it we're trying to do? Again, strategies are changing quarter by quarter. We're rolling out a new product. A competitor rolled out something new. A customer need is shifting. So if we can get that strategy and apply it to every stage of the sales process and focus on those leading indicators, then are we qualifying? This is not rocket science. Are we qualifying properly in order to achieve this goal that we have? Are we talking to the right people about the right things? Right? How are we competing? Do we have the data we need when the customer is making a decision to know where we have advantages over the competing alternative? So a lot of it is really driving those leading indicators to say, look, we believe if we do these things, we're going to drive ASP, we're going to drive win rate, that sort of thing. So it's really zeroing in on those. And that's very difficult to do in a traditional training environment because those leading indicators aren't really built in, right? It's kind of lightly customized, generic sales skills. We found, and Gordon, I don't even know if you've seen this yet, but I did some research with your organization on top performers and what they're investing in this year. And it was interesting because top performers are people who had higher win rate and higher overall goal achievement. And so top and bottom performers were buying the same stuff to enable their sales teams. The top performers were consuming it differently. They were having it be one-to-one, this rep. Yeah. So it wasn't so many, and this is my frustration in living in the methodology business for a while myself, is that these kind of classes are sort of one and done, and a lot of people are okay with that. Like I've had people say to me, "Hey, it's fine if someone walks away from a 2-day class and they learn one or two things." No, it's not. It's absolutely not fine anymore. That's way too low of a bar. We've got to know we're executing our strategy, and so the people who are doing this well are putting in processes. It's not a volunteer army. We just rolled this thing out. We're going to use it. We're going to make it sticky. We're going to pull it through. Right, we're going to embed it into our workflows, and those people again were almost double the win rate and double the amount of folks who made overall goal. So yeah, it's the way you consume it. But in the past, to pull this stuff through, you had to have a lot of human effort. Right, I coached $1 billion of deals at Microsoft a few years ago in my old business, and that was highly effective, but very difficult to scale. Right. But we knew it would actually move the needle because it was one-to-one in context, one rep, one deal in context of the strategy and helping them execute their strategy. And I think that's the shift. We should train people how to execute your strategy versus how to sell generically.
Sure. So I want to ask a question around what you just talked about, Brian, and I use that term stickiness a lot as well. And we know organizations invest a lot in CRM, sales training, tools, methodology, right? A lot of shiny objects that translate to a lot of stranded value. They've made the investment, but the utilization and value that they're getting from those investments is underwhelming. And I think what you're talking about is embedding through change management or other motions how you have to shift and change and adopt and create the stickiness that you described. So from your experience, what's the one piece of sage advice you would give our listeners to say, these are the critical success factors to make this work and work across the enterprise?
Yeah, this is what we've learned doing this $1 billion of human services coaching, is that first of all, we have to get down to, this opportunity and this stage, right? So we've got to provide that, are we qualifying? And so what we found is it's the typical stages of qualify, stakeholder engagement, can we compete? And, then doing discovery and preparing solutions and presenting those solutions. So all that isn't going to change all that much. What we learned is it's data at every one of these sales stages. It's data that really helps get deals closed. What are our qualifiers? When we meet these 5 things, the probability of win rate goes up, the probability of deal optimization and renewal goes up. When we ask these kind of discovery questions and understand these needs, we can compete more effectively. I mean, we have to really get down to the stage, right? And get into what data do we need at this stage. And this is what we've learned. And that's what we did as human coaches, is said, all right, what do we need to know? And then we were building all that stuff real time, where now with technology, again, we can build out 20 or 30 scopes of data in the AI guide's brain and have that guiding happening real time on not on every deal, but as many deals as you deem is, the highest impact for you.
Sure. I want to bring us up maybe a level or two. As you know, at SAM, a big part of what we know to be true, and I'll go back to disrupt versus being disrupted. And I just did a talk last week at a large manufacturing organization, and we were talking about this topic in particular. And when I talk to CEOs and other executives, they want to move faster. They know they need to be agile. They know they need to be flexible, and they need to be resilient, especially during times of uncertainty, which is the world we live in today. It's become the norm. And what customers are looking for are opportunities to co-create and innovate with their supply chain partners, their the folks that are part of their solutioning around this. But what executives tell me is they have a fragmented go-to-market. Left hand and right hand, they're siloed. They're not really working well together effectively. So during times of uncertainty, along with the need for sales teams to do things differently in terms of innovation and co-creation and value, recognizing that sometimes those headwinds are pretty profound and they have to influence without authority. What are those top performing sales teams doing differently in terms of innovation and value co-creation with customers, recognizing all the conditions and headwinds we just talked about?
Yeah, one is, and it may not be that interesting, but you and I on this podcast have talked about discovery. We've got to completely redefine discovery. If we're going to co-create and innovate, we have to lead the customer, again, from what's keeping you awake at night to this is what should be keeping you awake at night. And that's a pretty big shift. If I'm talking to this stakeholder at this level, I've got to understand where I need to be leading that person. And then the second piece we talked about too is decision-making, is helping customers understand. And the first, it's funny, I used to teach decision-making, so I love this part, but you start with, what problem are we trying to solve before we make the decision as to the best way to solve it? And so discovery done properly is really doing that diagnostic work, right? And then if you have that diagnostic work, and then you can embed that into, so that helps the customer. And then when you get to the decision process, based on what you're trying to achieve, here's the people who should be involved. Here's the criteria for you to make an optimal decision for your organization, which is what's going to drive value, right? Am I choosing the right thing? Am I defining the problem properly? Am I choosing the right thing? And if we do that, Jim Dickey, who speaks at a lot of your conferences, he tells a story about his research that but buyers rank sellers 9th out of 10 places they go for insight, which is devastating. That's the bad news. The good news is they said, however, I'm wide open to meeting more with your sales reps if they have something to bring me. And if we're doing discovery properly and we're really helping them diagnose current state versus desired state, right? And we're bringing some support to help them make optimal decisions. Maybe sometimes it's not even us. They'll talk to us, but we got to give the reps the skills to do that, and more importantly, the data and the insight to be able to do this properly.
What we know, it's an interesting insight that you just shared, because what we know to be true, especially now, as educated consumers with access to information pretty much on any topic in any way, instantaneously getting those insights at our fingertips. The statistics used to say that, 70% of the buying process has been done before a customer even engages with a salesperson. And the most recent information that I've seen is now that's trending more to 85 to 90%. So it's interesting that the ranking of a seller is 9 out of 10. So the real question is then, based on what you just said, how do we flip that coin over? How do we revert to the seller being at the epicenter of the buying process?
Yeah.
What do you see?
Well, it's interesting too, because the whole notion of the buyer journey, right, came out a long time ago, and I think directionally that was right, but part of it. But I don't feel like that ever got executed. I don't feel like most of the methodologies that the reps are being trained on are really helping them provide support and tools based on where the buyer's at, right? And that's really the big piece is giving them that, and buyers will talk to us. If I ask you what's keeping you awake at night, you already know this. It provides zero value to you. If I'm presenting situation to you to say, hey, what's the risk of not doing this? What's the risk of doing this improperly? And I'm asking those real diagnostic questions to get you to really better clarify your current state, your desired state, and what problem we're solving for. They will talk to us. If I can get in there and help your organization make a better decision. And then, on a tactical level, it's funny, and I think you're aware of this, that we prescribe reps always bringing 3 different solutions to the customer. And it's kind of back to that even provides a ton of value, because many times they don't actually know what they need. And my old business partner, who was a Harvard professor, used to say that giving them 3 options is kind of a sensitivity analysis to their needs. What's the best fit for my organization? So, yeah.
I absolutely love the insight about, well, first of all, I've had executives say, if anybody ever showed up in my office asking me what keeps me up at night, that would be a very short conversation. Correct. They want us to come with a point of view. They want us to take a risk and be willing to get in harm's way. And through discovery, come prepared to have a point of view. And to your point about 3 scenarios or solutions or outcomes, like be willing to have a point of view coming in, not coming in asking questions that are completely frustrating to an executive, because they would expect you to know enough about my business to be willing to come with a point of view. So let's kind of come back to some of the trends we were talking about earlier, or at least implying, Brian, as you think about the trends that you truly see from a CloseStrong perspective, you see shaping the future of sales training and enablement more broadly. What are the 3 biggies that you're seeing around those trends?
Well, one, the first one is this whole idea of strategy to tactics, right? We should be giving teams the chops to execute the strategy. And I'll give you a quick example. We use this company, Altamont Manufacturing, who was a contract manufacturer, and they added in design services because that moved them upstream in the buying process, right? Now I'm selling integrated design. I'm involved earlier, as well as contract manufacturing, which is somewhat commoditized. Now the question is, how do the reps execute that? Jim Dickey again said to me, we announced something like this at SKO, and then on Monday, everybody goes back and sells the same thing, and buyers are buying the same thing. So the one big trend is we need to rethink not how to sell, but how to execute my strategy. For this company, it's like, all right, so now that we have this new widget that we're bringing out, what does a qualified opportunity look like for this solution, given our strategy? Which stakeholders should we be talking to? What new KPIs can we impact? How do we now compete against these various solutions? Because that's changed. What sort of discovery should we be doing? All of that needs to get pulled through at the deal level. And I think that's the number one switch, is rethinking sales training from how to sell in a lightly customized manner to how to execute your business strategy at every sales stage, and especially when that strategy is changing on each deal. So I think that's one sort of massive shift. The other shift is that there's now, I think sales training is great. I still run a sales training company, but there's a more effective way to do this now. You know, that most of those models were built 50 years ago. There hasn't been a new methodology in 25 years, and those models were built in a time that no longer exists. We've got technology, you know, so we had to do the whole 2-day rollout thing. We couldn't customize all that deeply because it all had to be done by hand, you know. And so I think where it's going is completely rethinking. There's an entirely new way to think about sales training versus these lightly customized 2-day events. You now have the ability to do 24/7, 365 support in context. Right. And so that's where it's going to go. It's meeting the rep. It's always on. They don't have to recall anything, right? You're getting guided constantly at the stage you're at, on the deal that you're at. And we have to start rethinking of sales training in an entirely different light. And people have been pulling that lever for years and years and years the same way. And it's like, no, there is a new way to do it now. So there's a new way to execute your strategy to tactics. It starts with that. That's what we should be training people to do, is execute your go-to-market strategy. And then there is a new way to do that always on 24/7, you know, individualized for that rep, individualized for this deal.
Love it. What you just described is such a positive disruption. You know, we oftentimes think of disruption sometimes in a negative light, but what you just described is transformative from a sales productivity, from a sales accuracy, from a time to market perspective. And I love the 24/7, 365 always on, because I can lean in to a methodology that's always there for me. But it's accurate and it's effective and it's scalable and repeatable. So having said all of that, Brian, I had one final question I was curious to ask you about, because we've been talking a lot about the seller journey and kind of what they're being now asked to do. What advice would you give to sales leaders who are trying to coach and develop their teams, especially based on where this disruption is headed?
Yeah, it's maybe rethinking some of your spend, right? And looking at the $26 billion that we're spending. Is that getting you where you're at? And it's funny because GPT gave me this language about my own solution, that we need to move from to make your enablement strategy execution. And just that shift alone, I would love for sales leaders to start thinking about, it's not training people how to sell. My shift is executing this strategy this quarter again, which is going to change. And I think that's a huge one. The other one is proactively building systems, human systems or technology systems that proactively coach reps. There's a lot of things today where the rep can go to, XYZ coach and ask a question, which is different than guiding based on strategy, guiding in advance based on strategy. So I think managers need to be thinking about that there's an entirely different way to enable reps now, and that's enabling them to execute. I did a podcast on my show with Frank Cespedes, a Harvard professor who wrote a book called Aligning Strategy and Sales. And I think Frank's the only one I know that's talking about this. How do there are parts of your strategy that have to be executed one rep, one deal at a time. And that's the challenge. And he said there's a disconnect between the PowerPoints that are either in a boardroom or at SKO, and then getting that down to the deal level, to the stage level, to the rep level, and saying, how do I need to behave differently? What data do I need to be able to execute this strategy? And I think that's where sales leaders need to be thinking about that's our goal now, is to execute that strategy one deal at a time.
Brian, this was incredibly insightful. I can't thank you enough for investing the time with me today to have this discussion. It goes without saying that the way you're thinking about it and executing against it at CloseStrong is very much in line with, as we said earlier, where the puck is going. And most importantly, how AI and modern technology are really redefining sales training, but more importantly, the pivot to aligning to sales strategy. So I just want to say thanks again for making the time today. It's been incredibly insightful, and I appreciate it very much.
Great. I enjoyed it too. I love talking about this stuff. So thanks.
Yeah. And so to our listeners, just to recap, we've explored how the proliferation of AI and modern technology are redefining sales training. We also talked about the importance of coaching high impact skills and what leaders need to think about and also lead their teams around, especially as we pivot to what's next. And I think today we got a glimpse into how high performing teams are creating new value for their customers and how we're now meeting the demands using technology for what sales training will evolve into and look like to create the value and differentiation we're looking for in the marketplace. So Brian, again, thanks again for tuning in. We really appreciate your leadership on this. And for all of our attendees today, thanks for tuning in. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the SAMA podcast, share it with your network. And until next time, good selling to all of you. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We hope today's wisdom will lead you down the path of experiencing success in your profession. Remember, the key to successful strategic account management is discovering where your customer wants to go and helping them get there. Subscribe to our podcasts at strategicaccounts.org. We hope you will leave a positive rating and share this podcast with your friends and colleagues. If there's something we can do to improve our podcasts, please let us know. That's all for today. See you on the next one.